Unlock your farm's full potential with Profit Max. Gain access to advanced tools and analytics that identify key areas for increased profitability. Work with professionals who create farm-specific strategies for your farm's unique challenges. Ready for success? Start with a personalized consultation at rootcausag.com.
Unlock insights with podcast exclusives. Gain access to bonus episodes and behind-the-scenes discussions with industry experts, delivering in-depth perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Equip yourself to tackle complex problems effectively. Subscribe now at rootcausag.com.
Join mastermind calls and engage directly with experts and thought leaders. Get personalized answers to your toughest questions and connect with a dynamic community of like-minded professionals. Grow together and create opportunities for success. Sign up today at rootcausag.com.
Welcome back to the Root Cause Podcast, where we like to explore common and controversial topics in agriculture. I'm your host, Cali Whitwell, and today's conversation is one you won't want to miss. All right, y'all, welcome back to Root Cause. Today, we're going to talk about a controversial topic of carbon farming. There's a lot of talk about it. A lot of farmers are leery about it. We're going to dig deeper. So today with me, I have Josh Thurman, Nicole Glenn, and Kaleb Dinwiddie, same as the last episode. So let's get into it. Josh, we all know you're smart as hell when it comes to
I'm not.
the biology and that type of thing. So explain to us, what is carbon and what are these carbon credits?
Well, I mean, carbon, solid liquid gas there. We're looking at CO2, carbon dioxide, photosynthesis, taking that on the underside of the leaves, plants taking it in, making it energy. So we have to figure out how to have healthy plants with proper root exudation to take soluble carbon and get that into soil carbon. So we'll think of generically, as you said earlier before we were live here, is organic matter. Carbon's probably 60% of the organic matter. So what we're trying to do is take carbon dioxide and sequester it as soil carbon, taking a gas into something remotely tangible.
And this gas is above all the Earth's surface.
Yeah, pre-industrial revolution, 240, 50 parts per million. Now it's probably 450 parts per million. So, yeah. And you're not going to sequester all of it because, soil respiration and plant respiration, what are you doing? It's releasing some of that too. C4 plants aren't as bad though because it has to do with rubisco and the way it works with oxygen in there, so it doesn't lose as much.
And I'll say that again.
Josh, what's the C4 plant?
For us, we're going to be talking about corn today. Okay. But corn doesn't lose as much through respiration as rye or as wheat or beans or something like that.
So soybeans are a C3 plant, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
But carbon is not a substance we could put in a bucket.
I guess, okay. I guess you could if you went out there and you had good, healthy soil and you saw that aggregation and you had some water hold capacity, you would know then you had some good carbon in there.
Because you can load organic matter.
Mm-hmm.
You could get a bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
if there's 5% organic matter into I states, and there's some carbon. I don't know how to equate that. I'm not an expert. I don't know how to equate that in exact tons, but it should be about 60%.
So pre-revolution there, what would have before this prairie anywhere was torn up? What would in Franklin, Kentucky? What would have been the organic matter back then? No clue. Do we have any?
I don't know. I asked somebody about that, an old timer. It was a Gary Lillard, friend of mine. He was an NRCS guy. He's good about stuff like that. He knows the natural state of things. So we was cutting tobacco a few years back, and we was talking about that. And, the natural state of things, you talk about original conditions of land while you're cutting tobacco, how things go. So we were doing that. And there was a grassland, and there was a lot of grasslands there where we were at. And if you're thinking about the grassland and prairie grasses, and you're going to have a deep root system right there. You're not talking about 4 to 6 inches, you're probably talking 12, 13. So you'd have to think that translates into 4%, 5% organic matter. You'd have to think that.
Here, and then if we were in Minnesota, could be way more.
Yeah, colder temperatures would probably
because of the
it's not
freezing.
Always, microbial decomposition isn't always there, because you're not your microbes aren't working in the wintertime, kind of like they are. Well, in Florida, it'd be hard to have a higher percentage of organic matter because you're always breaking down something.
Right.
But you could still have good soil carbon and low organic matter there.
Okay.
You could still do that.
We'll talk about that. That's deep. How do you?
It's deep, but keep it dumb. Like keep it on our level.
Well, it goes back to where are you getting your carbon from? You're getting your carbon from what God gives us up there and what we put back out there through the carbon cycle, So you have to figure out how to get healthy plants exuding with root exudates, quality root exudates that aren't just short chain carbons. I think Dr. Christine Jones does some good work called the liquid carbon pathway, and that's worth looking into. But essentially, healthy plants, if you want to do that. Healthy, and what we think healthy plants, that's not monoculture riding down the window and looking at corn growing. Because that's probably not, does green always mean healthy?
No.
So, Josh, I think that's the point to drive across there. So, with commercial crop growing now, are these plants at their full capacity functioning to be able to pull in that carbon, sequester it down into the soils? I think there is a big disconnect there of are we really carbon farming in the row cropping industry now?
No, I was listening to John Kemp speak at a meeting, and he was talking about that. On a good day, probably 15% photosynthetic capacity where we're at now, and 100% would be a greenhouse pumping carbon dioxide in, controlling all the parameters. We're not there, obviously. But we could go to 30, 40%. So if we could increase that, we do have an avenue there. We do have an avenue, but what do we not do? We always don't. You're talking about the prairies and stuff. That means there was always something what?
Growing.
Green. There's green. There you go. You hit the nail on the head right there.
So how did up north where they have 9 months of winter, in the South we call it year-round winter, how are their soils so much more organically rich than ours? It's all about the ice age.
They would have to do with that, but it'd have to be just, you don't always have that the way I understand it, you don't always have that microbial decomposition going on there in a place of stasis there in the wintertime. They become static. They're not working all the time because they're froze out.
So those plants aren't really bringing it.
Well, they would be until that point,
yeah.
And it's also, carbon isn't carbon. There's soluble carbon, there's stable organic matter, which is humus, which people think that, my microbes live off organic matter. If you have stable organic matter, microbes are not living off humus, or the humic part of that, because that's a stable organic structure. That is the end of microbial decomposition, not the start. That is the end. That's where it ends at. That's called humification. That's where you create that at, through microbial decomposition. So, don't let me, I may understand a little bit enough to be dangerous, but what it essentially entails, if we want to go down this path, I guess what I'm skipping around, we have a community there. Mycorrhiza fungi is huge into that. How it creates the glomalin and those gum and those glues to hold those aggregations together with the microbes can live in there and do their deal.
They're glue, but they also allow air pockets.
Good porosity, making sure that water's moving throughout that profile the way that it should be. And if you don't have that glue, you have compactable soils.
I think microbes can make, through decomposition, they can make, Bruce Tanio talked about that years ago. I think I was watching a video of him, or maybe Philip was talking about that. Well, they can make their own water. Not enough for us to do anything with, but enough for them to live on. But the thing we have to have is a quality of root exudates that gets us good soluble carbon, some short chain monosaccharides, polysaccharides, They're going to be in there breaking down lignin and cellulose, which is what they have to do to do in this decomposition process to make this soluble food source, so that then break down to make that stable organic matter that we're calling carbon,
So the plants are sponges.
Yeah, that's what I should have said.
Just like humans.
So, never mind, I'm not even going to ask that. I was going to ask why are plants good sponges, but we're going to go right back down that rabbit hole. Switching gears a little, Kaleb, I know on your farm you implement some of these carbon practices and carbon credits and all of this. Let's get into that. Like we've talked about the biology and the background and the soil and all of that. Let's talk about what people are doing today with it.
Well, what got me on this is I thought I had a compaction problem, and I did. But 600 horsepower and a tanker load of fuel and a 15-foot plow was not a solution. Because you rip it, then weather happens, you pack it down more, you apply more. I mean, so the salts that we're applying are killing out that glue, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. We shouldn't get, 2 to 5 inches of rain and then just a week or so later be in a drought situation. That obviously shows you that we're missing something in this system. Why are these soils actually compactable? When, if you think about the prairies back in the day, that wasn't the system. They were flowing really good. They were able to maintain that if they were in a drought period, is have soils that worked for that system.
Mm-hmm. So we know what carbon is now, loosely. We're taking carbon dioxide and trying to make a stable humic substance out of that. If we want to get generic, we'll call it organic matter, and we'll figure 60% of that. Okay, so now that we have decidedly come up with this definition, now what?
So you're saying that the higher my organic matter is, the more carbon I'm sequestering in that soil?
Probably the more potential, but probably that's not necessarily true.
Well, I would say
because
in the past, that's how we've looked at it, is like if you look at your organic matter, that's end all be all, which I don't think that's what we necessarily
but let's
need to be
talk
looking at all
about
the
that
times.
then. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about people who have cover crop, what good is that organic matter where you grew a 7-way cover crop there on your farm? I'm not saying you did. I'm just looking at you as a farmer.
Yeah.
Saying you did.
I'm doing it this year, first time.
Well, but you're looking
in
at
a while.
that. If you're looking at that and you see 4 to 5 years of residue,
undecomposed.
you get what I'm going.
Yeah.
So that tells you we got to have that because of sugar sinks. We can have a carbon source or our soil's going to be a carbon source or a carbon sink. We get that above ground foliage, and I've got the numbers somewhere where our sugars are at, but I'm not going to find them right now. But if we don't have that returning into the soil,
So
you know what I'm saying? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's not organic matter. People look at all that organic matter. That's inert material is what that is. That's not organic matter. Our roots are where the organic matter is coming from. If we concentrate on being root farmers
so to her point, you're building more organic matter. You build more water holding capacity, which you build more root structure. That's where you gain more carbon sequestration, right?
Yeah, no, 100%, because you're having a living system. Then I mean the way John Kemp described it is the stable humic substances is a house for them to be able to build more. And if we give them a soluble carbon source to feed on and a structure to live in, then they can build more. So knowing that, now what do we do with carbon, Callie? What are we supposed to do with it?
Well, that's what I was about to get into, the financials of it. People are now being able to make, or farmers are able to make a profit off of these carbon credits. I want to talk about that. I mean, another stream of revenue could be so important, and it can make or break these farmers nowadays. So what about it? What are we doing? How are we sequestering these carbon credits, whatever? How are we going about that?
So, Callie, there's a lot of things out here using the greenwashing method. And, I've been a part of a few of those in the past. One didn't pay any money and one paid decently. But the real money here is going to be when we're truly testing the amount of carbon that we're sequestering in our soil. And we know that the higher the biology, the higher the sponge of our soil is, the more we can get. And there's more to come on all this later, in other podcasts with people that know more about it. But just as a farmer, yes, we need that revenue. We need it desperately.
Another stream that's game changer.
And I think right now, the prices of, commodities is just not there. And we're thinking about, all the scary buzzword with the farm bill and whatnot. And people have, wanted to tread these waters lightly, which they should have, because I think about some of the carbon markets that first entered. They maybe weren't where they really needed to be. But now we're getting to a point where there's maybe a lot more of them, a couple of different revenues, whether that be government or small independent companies. There's a bunch of different routes that we can be able to take. But, also caution you, make sure you're walking before you're running. But I think if we're not utilizing some of these revenues of money right now, we may be losing out on the farm.
Well, it's kind of the situation. I mean, I'm not saying it's free money. Nothing in life is free. But if you can get it, to me, in my head, when I got explained, because, carbon's a hard idea to grasp. It's an invisible crop. I know it can be in soil or whatever, but into my head, when we talk about carbon farming, it is an invisible
physical
crop
that you can't hold.
Yeah, we go out and we dump a load of wheat at the granary, but
And you get that money returned
but
from
like this,
how many bushels. Yeah.
I mean, there's no actual trade-off. And I was having a conversation with my brother the other day. There is no good or service being traded, technically.
So how about,
you can't hand them the carbon.
So how about data that we talked about in that previous episode? I think that is kind of the revenue. And I think about the people that are wanting these, carbon credits for larger companies and what have you, is they're looking at the practices on those farms. So you're giving a trade-off. You're giving some of your data that you implemented on that farm that is hopefully, sequestering more carbon throughout your soils. So maybe that's the trade-off that maybe we need to be looking at is collecting that data on the farm for them to be able to utilize so we can kind of gauge, how much we are sequestering on the farm.
Yeah.
So, but Callie, if you're in a real carbon program that's testing the soil, you're going to have a certificate.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying that there's not a certificate or something, but I'm saying like
it's hard to
tangible
wrap your
items.
mind around.
So that's the greatest part. You don't have to plant it. You don't have to truck it.
No.
I think there's something we're missing, though. If I also have a thought, but we probably won't go down that.
That's probably a scary place to be.
Very.
But
His head.
if we become carbon farmers, and inevitably we become better farmers.
Yeah.
You have to, but you also become a producer of your own nutrients, so to speak, because you have this sink there. You've created a carbon sink. Then if you created carbon, you have microbial life. You have a flourishing community. You have mycorrhizae. Trichoderma, let's go. We have this flourishing community of a microbiome that's getting us away, that got us to this damnable position that we're in anyway. So at the worst case, if you want to play in a carbon market and you want to see that net score go up, it challenges you to go against status quo and farm differently. And I just sit here trying to unpack that. That's a beautiful concept. Just to think to get that money you're going after, you're going to have to do things different because, the over application of nitrogen is one of the biggest things that's driving down the carbon and your organic matter, if you want to call it that. But it's quote unquote not really burning through it, but yes, in a roundabout way, burning through your carbon by the over application of nitrogen. What easier way to start saving money than doing some SAP testing and look at your nitrogen conversion score and realizing you could take your 55% efficiency. We talked about this one day. I don't want to get 55 of 100. I want to be 100 of 55, right?
Yeah.
So right there, we're drawing back the needle on inputs that's making us money in a bifurcated manner on the backside because one, you're going to get free nutrients from your carbon. Two, you're saving money on nitrogen inputs. And third, you're going to get a check from your carbon source.
And then fourth, there's not just carbon. I mean, there's conservation payments.
Okay, that's above me.
So one of my regrets of 2024 is planting wheat. I should have planted all covers, drawn the payments, and dealt with it.
If a bullfrog had wings, right?
And I'm not going to make, I think one of those programs is $25. Well, I'm not going to clear $25 on this wheat crop, probably.
Mm-hmm.
How long would it take? That's the conversation I have with a lot of customers I'm blessed to work with. Jim and I were talking about that the other day. We're sitting at his table there in his house. I think, you take his operation, you take a scalable approach. We're going to start introducing, all right, we get the corn off. We're not going to wheat on this many acres. We're going to start the cover crops. We're going to start sequestering the carbon. We're going to have this green bridge there. We're going to be growing something green all the time. You take a scalable approach and you say it, we like percentages or round numbers, like 10, 15% a year. You get there where you've removed wheat from the equation. Oh, well, I'm losing money. Are you really, though? Are you really? Wheat's a cash flow crop. Yes, it does make some money, but in the process of doing that, you removed your input cost. You get where I'm going with all this.
Yeah. So in working on Profit Max, it's kind of when I've had this whole thought. But yeah. So, and we're not saying, we're putting out a litter. We changed to SOP, MES 10. You have guys using that, and we do with our nitrogen. There's solutions coming for that, but they're at the forefront. But today we've got some more ways to do this. And when you put out muriated potash, you're just nuking. You're nuking your biology, which is slowing down this whole system.
Well, and we keep Roundup in the system as what glyphosate in the system as well. Sorry. We keep glyphosate in the system as well. And we have all these things. You see all these people come up here and they talk about in the space, biology. And then the next thing you see, they're talking about spraying some gly or fungicide, anything with a side on it. How are you ever going to get there when you're always going one step forward and four backwards, man? You can't get there that way.
So
you can't.
how are we going to farm without a side? Can we do it, Nicole?
I think we can. So I'm thinking about a specific carbon market right now that I've heard about, and it's going to be some residue management products. So I think about those because, previously in my schooling, we think about maybe organic matter just coming from what's, setting on top of the soil. So if we have a lot of, good corn residue out there, it's just going to break down and give you everything that you need to. So we have good organic matter. But I think about that residue management product being able to break that down quicker, to be able to cycle those nutrients throughout the soil. And that biology, in my opinion, it can also help with quite a few things as well. So this is, kind of theoretical. It doesn't really have any stats to it, but thinking about in an area that has really high slug pressure, like I'm sure you deal with that here. I have a bunch of growers in Tennessee, Kentucky dealing with slugs year in and year out. That's completely ruining the crop. And if we think about, attacking those eggs before they're able to attack that crop, so getting rid of some of those eggs with some of that residue management product, like they're breaking down that residue, they're going to help break down some of those eggs, and we're ahead of that. So I think there's multiple different avenues we can look at. Not just thinking about, carbon farming or we're getting this check for doing this practice.
You're getting the benefit of all that. I mean, in 200 bushel of corn, there's 5 tons of stover per acre. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's a lot of nutrients.
There's a lot of nutrients that you paid hard money for that you need to make sure is cycling back through that system.
Yeah, and that's what you went to earlier. If you're walking out there and there's 5-year-old dead plants, your biology and
make sure it's returning to where it needs to be.
You don't have the decomposers out there. And look up, if you're out there, go to Amazing Carbon, also rootcauseag.com. But look up Amazing Carbon. It's Dr. Christine Jones's site, and it's amazing. It's amazing. All kind of papers there to read. But we have to take this now because where we're at, we have to take this as serious as a corn crop. You have to think of your carbon crop every bit as, don't you think so? As every bit as serious as a corn crop, if not much, maybe more so.
Yeah, I think in 26 we'll be making decisions based off of what we can do with the carbon.
Okay, you're a farmer then. What clicked that over in your brain? Was it
the root cause of my bank account?
Okay,
where it all begins.
It's necessity.
So it's I was talking to someone the other day. Change is hard. Change by desire is hard. Change by necessity is hard, but it's not as hard as change by desire.
Okay.
Want to and have to, two different things.
Yeah.
That's something I want to get into. I know we have talked, I want to talk about the financial benefits of possibly getting into carbon farming for these farmers who know nothing about it. We have talked about the decrease of cost in our inputs. What else have you seen?
So, at this point, the carbon program we're involved in is collecting data in January, going to make payments in February, and we're going to have a lot more to offer coming up then. But, so we're, at the end of the day, just the overall change in using biology to fight soil compaction, to reduce fertilizer inputs, those kind of things are worth it.
Even though some of these companies are going to write you a check at the end of the day, hell, you're saving money in the long run. You're getting more for your buck.
So that's just the icing. The real cake is you're making a more sustainable life for your farm.
That is it right there.
Because I think, this whole term of the carbon market is such a scary thing. And I feel like, just like regenerative agriculture, sustainable agriculture, I think this carbon market, carbon farming has scared farmers away. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it's what we're talking about on this podcast is these more sustainable approaches to things to just make sure that our soils are working for us, by having healthier plants out there. At the end of the day, that's what these carbon markets are about, is just implementing more sustainable practices on your farm. And we can talk about a couple of different ways that we can hopefully move that needle and be sequestering more carbon on the farm.
Yeah, and just like I was trying to think about how long it's been. So when we move from a nitrogen stabilizer that's detrimental to the soil biology, now they say, oh, well, you can just put a carbon source with it. What's that? What are we doing there?
Well, the way that I understand that, there's nowhere in nature that nitrogen exists without carbon. So carbon, I don't want to use the word stabilize it, but it bonds to it in the soil, and it's going to keep it in a usable form.
Because it's so leachable,
Or you got
volatile.
You got humic acids, you got fulvic acids, and those inherently have anion exchange capacities. Like the CEC of humic acid's like 300,000. It can hold some stuff. And
So what about nitrogen? So I think that's one of the biggest things I get asked every year is what about these nitrogen stabilizers? Do you think that can be an option for that?
I think if you marry it with carbon compound, I think you can keep that nitrogen in a form that, one, is going to make it more usable to that crop. It's going to put a buffer against the salt for that crop. Then you could put some trace minerals with that, a certain one I'm thinking right there if we're talking about nitrate. You could put a trace mineral with that and take your conversion factor to the roof. So how that's working, though, the way that I understand it, it's just taking that nitrogen and bonding to it and holding that into a form that becomes usable to that plant. It's not going to go through that nitrogen cycle as quickly. It's not cycling over as quickly.
So that's what got us from putting out 80 to 100 units in to 250 to 300 units is because we were over applying because of the loss. Mm-hmm. And you're saying if our soils are better, and
you're not going to make healthy soils by over applying nitrogen. It's not going to happen. Those two things can't exist.
They don't go together.
No, man, it's oil and water.
And your biology is not going to work for you.
No. You get that carbon and nitrogen ratio way too narrow, and we can't.
So that's a good one. Carbon and nitrogen ratio. What is that?
I was reading an article the other day. I think it was, I want to say Illinois or Iowa, and it said that 67% of the nitrogen we get in our plants is through soil. So that means everything else that we're applying is not getting uptaken by that plant. And you're paying for 100% of that nitrogen that you're applying out there.
And
that's
it's
everything.
If farmers knew that, they knew what they were buying was going to waste, but would it click in their heads?
Mm-hmm. And also think about just like I talked about the nitrogen stabilizers, and we've tested them for 4 years, and they have not given us a return. We've lost the amount of product on that every single year because they're super expensive. And if we're able to implement something else on the farm that's going to give us more money at the end of the year, and it's more sustainable for the soil or for that plant, that's just a win-win scenario.
Well, think of that carbon to nitrogen ratio. You want your nitrogen for your protein, your carbohydrates for your energy source. Just like us, man, they got a certain ratio they want. And the way I understand that is somewhere between 23, 24 to 1 is where they think that is. And we got that in our soils. We're probably at 8 to 1. 8 to 1. So they're always just burning through it.
Okay, so can we talk about this? So if we think about some of the high yielding guys, we're not going to name any names, but in the corn industry, there's some, and there's some in the soybean industry. I think of it as them pumping a lot of carbon into their system throughout the season in different applications. And if we look at, so Bex has their 400 bushel crop that they try to achieve every year in corn, and every single pass has some sort of carbon source in it for those plants and for that biology.
I don't think we can even unpack we don't understand what all it's doing for us. Mm-hmm. We just know it's good.
It's working.
There's a lot of benefits that is understood, but I don't think we know everything. But we're not going to get too much carbon in this system. Okay, you can get like 60 to 81. You got some wheat straw, rye straw out there. Then you have a carbon penalty to pay because you have nothing it's got to break that down before you get anything usable out of your,
right.
So I don't know. We've got to transform the conversation into getting people to buy in to carbon credits by showing them that at the end of the day, not only is it a money maker, it's going to be a money saver. And, how do you even start that conversation, though? That's what I'm getting at. I'm trying to sit there.
Literally pitching what you just said, money maker and money saver.
Well, the desperation part.
Yeah, the economy's getting so, and I'm not saying it's getting so bad, but we're not in the best place we should be. People are going to be looking for what to do next.
But where we sit, where us four sit, I believe we honestly and earnestly believe there is a hell of a lot better way to farm than what we've been sold. Agreed?
Oh, 100%.
Agreed.
And
we're
If you
looking
can
at
get
the
paid-
short-term fixes. Everything we're looking
Nothing's
at now.
long-term.
Nothing is long-term. And
No.
we need to have just a little bit of patience when it comes to a lot of these things that we're trying to implement, on the farm. And in return, we're going to be able to reduce a lot of those short-term fixes and have a farm that we can pass down from generation to generation. And I think that's something to hold your hat on right there, is if, my granddad and my dad have instilled a lot of hard work into me, and the last thing I want to do is have to sell off that farm because we're not able to farm the way we are anymore. And if we're not changing on the farm, we're not adopting new things, looking at it just from a different perspective, be willing to listen and have these conversations with people is going to be, that foot in the door. I'm not saying run through that door, because I think we all know some people that have done that and it just doesn't work out for them. But these short-term fixes are not going to help. My nephew, he's not going to be able to farm if we keep doing what we're doing.
so why not take a colorless and odorless gas for free in the atmosphere?
Yeah, take that money.
Yeah.
and
Take that
sequester it in
money.
the soil and do something with it.
So we've got that gas. Then we also have nitrogen, free nitrogen. Yeah, so,
Wow, whole different
so,
thing
So
there.
how do you,
One may
It's-
feed the other there.
so it's a total system. I mean, they're intertwined.
Yeah, I mean, you increase your carbon, your stable humic substances in there, then you're going to obviously and invariably have, let's call it healthier soils. It's going to be able to sequester and fix some nitrogen as well. And that's where those scores get really drawn down. I was reading something the other day where they took this guy was doing sap analysis, and he cut his nitrogen by 65%. 65%. But I mean, that's
So
a
you're
good
saying that
conversation. I'm not
one
saying
pound
everybody
in,
can
one
do
pound
that.
out isn't true.
I'm not saying it doesn't take a pound to grow a bushel. I'm saying synthetically,
But
probably not.
let's get it from what we own,
Okay.
in the soil. You pull it from that, and if it's not able to do that, then where we're doing something wrong.
The exciting part of this is I know I have so much to learn, as we all do, and
yeah.
that's the exciting part. But to know that there's markets coming online that can propagate what I would deem a better system would propagate a better system. I mean, why not? Because what we have done has depleted the carbon, has turned our soils from a carbon sink into a carbon source. We know that's not working. Why not give it a go?
Well, just because in the 1940s, your family, they've been there that long. How long?
Don't ask me.
Yeah, we're Southerners. I always.
It started with my grandfather's father.
I really appreciate the
History.
northern people knowing their history better. So he made a decision to bring on triple 15 and put it on with a planter, and that don't mean he wouldn't make the same decision today, Josh, to do what you're saying, convert back. He might make that same decision today to make that convert.
And I think there was a time, that we needed to implement some of this. I think about the, how farming systems happen now is because of World War II. We needed to produce more. And you know what? That's great. That was what was happening in that time and period. But now I think we need to be looking more at quality of what we do have rather than trying to produce more because we see where the markets are, and that's not getting us anywhere. So if we keep trying to push that, more nitrogen, more phosphates, more potassium in your fertilizers, that we see it's not getting us where we really need to be. And at one point we maybe needed that to some extent, or maybe some companies needed that money.
Well, we've heard our whole life that we've got a population growing faster than the food supply, which is not true.
Not true anymore. Yeah, that was a
not
thing
true.
of the past.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we were at a point back then, it was quantity over quality, but now we need to switch back to quality over quantity.
And I think consumers realize that now. If you look at
Yeah.
the masses, people are demanding these things. They want
people
to know
are
where it's
wanting
coming from.
healthier options. I mean, you got all these stores that are booming with these natural things. I mean, heck, the raw milk, all this stuff.
Yeah, our generation. I think about this picture is like, when we take a picture of our food. Food eats first or whatever, and people take pride in that. So I think younger generations are willing to pay more for quality. I think in the past, just cheap. Let's go get our Doritos at Dollar General. I think more now we are looking at more of that quality produce and where it's coming from. I think there's a whole nother problem when it comes to mislabeling on things. That's a big thing that I think needs to be narrowed down when it comes to labeling on things. But the markets are changing.
They are. And I remember like growing up and being a little kid and going grocery shopping with my mom. It's like, oh, we're going to get this. It's cheaper. And I mean, that was just pinching pennies trying to save a dollar.
The time.
But now that we're older and we're all like, we actually look at our things. I mean, we're trying to make healthier options. We're trying to pick healthier choices. And it's not that, it's just how society is changing. And I mean, it's for the better.
If we're not growing, we're dying.
Yeah.
Human health starts with soil health, though.
So it all starts at the farmer. It all starts at the farmer.
It does, and I was sitting here thinking, that's why I'm just sitting here trying to deliberate on in my head is, in a monoculture system, we can raise it. Can we raise it to the indexes that need to be? I don't know. We'd have to introduce, can we colonize enough mycorrhizae or fungi in a monoculture system without having diverse cropping species? Can we do that? I don't know the answer. I'm asking, can we? We can increase the rate of photosynthesis by stitching together some trace minerals. You could do it with cover crop. Compost teas, I suppose you can, as long as you have the food source, soluble carbon food source. But damn it, it's worth a try, I guess, isn't it?
Well, I mean, yeah. What we're doing ain't working.
I mean, how about, fallow during the wintertime? We have been taught since the beginning of time, you want it clean, you want it to look nice and I guess brown, during the wintertime because, they say that those weeds are able to harbor pests and disease that can later show up in your into your cropping system. What about that? We have all winter to be able to have roots out there that are bringing in some of that carbon and storing it into that soil.
It's a free fertilizer, sun. It's free energy. We don't use it.
So a guy yesterday, Brian Hansel, gave me a good term for that.
What is it?
Farm ugly.
That's a tough one. We farm off of aesthetics.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, and we don't want to get too far in the weeds here. I mean, I ain't into grass-fed beef. I'm not into raw milk. I want good, clean water. This not all of that is something we're going to go to, but
we can only take on so much.
You can only do it's small steps.
But I think consumerism is going to dictate what we have to do. Mm-hmm. I think we can't ignore the crowd noise anymore.
Why don't we take the money that the government is giving to us before they take it away from us?
Ooh.
Is how I see that. There's so many programs right now that we can take advantage of, and I think we have regulatory people that we talk to all the time, and they're like, labels may be changing to where you're going to have to base each field off of a point-based system. So if you get over 9 points, you're going to have to go to your local government and tell them what you're about to apply to that field. So if we think about that, we're going to have to make these changes before they make them for us.
Yeah. Okay, switching gears here. How, we hear all these horrors of these carbon programs. We're talking about the carbon itself, but let's talk about these programs. How are farmers supposed to know what to look for when trying to choose one? I mean,
so you got to have a transparent partner.
Yeah.
You got to have, you've got to have somebody who knows what they're doing with the carbon that they're buying. So there's a lot of people out here just buying carbon to offset their own credits.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need a third party broker to bring the carbon producers together and the carbon polluters together. Sorry for the bad knock on them, but
no, that's how I picture it in my head. Is I'm not going to say. I mean, they're covering what they put off. They're covering their butts.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, in the first thing is it's not a bad thing. We're fortunate we've got this opportunity. Mm-hmm. And how we've looked past it all these years, I blame on, the whole education system. It's not a fair thing that this has all come up since 2020, really.
I've had to learn all of this. I didn't get any of this at any of the universities. I've had to open books, listen to podcasts, listen to Josh, listen to Kaleb. about all of these things to actually
Yeah.
figure it out. So we're all in the same realm
But there's a lot
of
of
trying
power.
to figure it out.
There's a whole lot of power coming from young folk who did not get indoctrinated by big ag / big school there.
Start there.
You know, and
Go to those
but
schools.
but then you come in and you're like, okay, maybe everything I haven't. The pedagogical differences between actuality and the degree are vast at this point. You know, like
Yeah.
the systems of education that got us to where we are, it's vast different than what we want to implement and what we're trying to do and what can be done and what we have seen done. Because we're still told from those people that these endeavors are not worthwhile and they cannot work, knowing all the well they damn sure can.
Look, we all eat, so we all need to be aware of this. We all eat, so we all need to be aware of what's going on.
Okay, so Kaleb, are you comfortable telling me what carbon program you use? I mean, we need an example. Let's walk through it.
Yep. So I'm on the organics one now.
Okay.
And like I said, we'll have a lot more information coming forward in January that we're getting all our testing in from the 24 season. And then by February, we hope to have monetized that. So,
Okay, so by testing, what do you mean?
So actual taking samples of the soil, the stratification of your soil types, how many samples. So it's an undertaking to do the sampling.
Well, I mean, now that you say that, so my brother, I don't know if y'all know, my brother is Caleb's farm operations manager, and he called me the other night, and he's like, Organics' guys are out here, and they got stuck. They ran off in a ditch. They were actually carbon testing one of Caleb's fields, and my brother lived close, and so he went and got his Ranger and pulled him out. But, that is proof. I mean, they're out here. They're doing it. They're putting the work into it.
It's not that theoretical, that you were talking about. It's not
Yeah.
something. It is
They're
becoming tangible.
actually
Yeah.
going to test it and see. Where I know some of these other, you said is it greenwashing or whatever, where they just pay you $1 for, I guess, I'm going to assume you have
they
this
just
much.
connect to your practices and say you sequester carbon.
But
So
this
it-
is actually
So that's
getting
just an
you-
algorithmic
Yeah.
plus X plus Y equals Z, quantitative
Yeah.
analysis. Deal.
So make
Okay.
sure we are cautious with a lot of these. There's a lot of, like you said, greenwashers out there. So, walk on these programs before you run, but sticking your toe in the water is going to be worthwhile.
And I think the key to that is actually getting with a program like Organics or like one that actually wants to go out and test, is actually going to do.
is having those numbers for you to be able to
you
look
want,
at.
I mean,
like-
back to our last episode, data. You want to be able to have that data to be able to see what you need to improve
Because
on.
that data will be valuable on what to do next. Right?
Yep,
So-
absolutely.
What is the best way for farmers to get started into this? Do they just need to research and what's the best way?
Yeah. So listening to the podcast, reaching out to us at rootcausag.com is a way. There's many programs, and just start doing your own analysis, and we're here to answer any questions.
Okay, Kaleb. So, when you first got into carbon farming, is there anything you wish you would have known? I mean, I know you said you did other programs before Organics. Do you want to talk about what made you end up getting out of those?
So the first one never paid,
Period.
That got that one. The second one is based on greenwashing, and you're just not getting the credit you deserve as the farmer, in my opinion. So I think that's why you need a soil tested program that's going along the way, and the people, as one of the smartest men I was ever around said one time, so the man who's bringing the flag up the pole, he needs to have something in this. The man who bought the flag, he needs to have something.
Yeah.
And then the man that put the pole up, but the man that dug the hole, he's the one that deserves to be paid. So I think you have to have a system of people that are transparent and telling you the whole thing. And
That's what was my dad's piece is he said, I think they're taking advantage of the farmers, these large corporations, and, that can go either way. So that's the important piece to draw out of that is make sure we have a trusted advisor, make sure those carbon people that are coming to you on your farm, that they know what they're talking about and they can walk you through that process. That's what matters the most to
That's
me.
another thing is I know a lot of these programs are going to go out and test. I mean, I know Organics is expecting 2 tons of carbon per acre. And it's turning out to be a lot more than that. But you need a company that's going to be transparent.
That's
and
willing to
tell
put
you
their
that.
money into testing.
Yes, but it's going to be able to tell you that and give you the data and be honest with you about it. But do y'all think that's one of the reasons that farmers steer away from it in the long
what you
run?
sequester will be based off of your your practices. And
Yes,
your
yes,
efforts.
yes, yes.
Tillages or whatnot.
But you want a company that's going to tell you you're honest.
Right.
Tons
What
per
those
acre.
practices are doing
Because
for you and how much.
the buyers want to buy a quality product. They don't want to buy.
The worst job you've done, the more you can get paid once you enter this arena, correct?
Well,
We don't, yeah.
Correct?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know. So
Okay.
there's
That's
a
a good
lot
question.
that's, you need to answer that next year.
Say it again.
I guess I don't want to say anybody's done a bad job of doing anything, but if you've not done the best job farming, if you've kept bare soil, you've not kept green cover on there, tillage, deep, whatever, your initial carbon score is going to be low, so it'll be easy to raise that.
Yeah.
Okay. I get what you're saying.
I think that's just even more drive to get people implementing some of these practices. And I know that may be at a disadvantage for people that have already been incorporating them on their farm, but hopefully they're already in a better, in a better position.
Yeah.
Maybe even economically, maybe they're already seeing some of those returns.
Perhaps.
Moving the needle is important.
A little bit at a
A
time.
little bit at a time.
Alrighty, y'all. We have covered a lot. But, honestly, I don't even think we've barely touched what carbon farming is. We've
a
even
lot more to
scratched the
figure out.
surface. So, to our listeners, thank y'all for tuning in. If you want to hear more, we're going to do a bonus segment talking a little more in detail over carbon farming and all of that and how to make financial gains from it. But I want to thank y'all, Josh, Nicole, Kaleb, for being here. And I'll see y'all next time.
Thanks,
All right.
Callie.
Till next time.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us on the Root Cause Podcast, where we tackled both the common and controversial topics shaping agriculture today. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I know I did. Don't forget to subscribe and join us next time for more insights and discussions you won't want to miss.